enoxaparin or so on at the time of this observation, was that they had a statistically significant increase on CT scans of existing hemorrhages, but they had no increased incidence of new hemorrhages, and that the enlargement was, the numbers were different, but nobody was clinically worse. The groups were not clinically worse because of the enlargement. And that sort of so the point I guess I bring up that always worries me with this is there's all this randomness occurring. When are these hemorrhages enlarged to begin with? It's random. So when I said you're lucky, the lucky may be that that's where they fell. What came out of that was then the question, should we then, could we find a group at most risk to expand their hemorrhages who should get recombinant factor 7A, or who would be the study population? And the bottom line was, couldn't identify a group because couldn't identify these predictors.
And that was a retrospective review from a...
That was a retrospective observation by the EBIC, the European Brain Injury Consortium.
Prospective observation. So they didn't control who got heparin when.
No, the nice thing is that their hospitals actually, they fall in line with protocols a lot better. They couldn't find that heparin it seemed to be a risk for enlargement of existing hemorrhage. That number, enlarging a hemorrhage from 2 centimeters across to 2.8 centimeters across was statistically different, but not clinically important. And it didn't seem to cause new hemorrhages. So at least the statement that we put in the guidelines is exactly along those lines, which is, it may happen. It appears to be safe. We can't, and the guidelines are very clear. They do not make any statement on which drug to use, but it seems that the addition of drug plus mechanical was better than not at all. And the most important thing I think that you've said, now that I'm long-winded enough, is we can't, because of that randomness that underlies this and the things that we've seen in our own house, until everybody just agrees, look, this is going to be completely randomized. This is how it's going to work. Don't presume that, every splenic rupture is going to have this. Don't presume, maybe the black box warning that those are going to have their dura violated, that they might get it for 24 hours. But until we, do something systematically, I agree with you. You just can't come up with an answer. You're finding the interruption issue may just be a marker of disease severity is the problem.
Yeah, I kind of doubt it though, as much as it stands out, because when every group that we look at, our trauma, our general trauma patient population, our overall TBI population, the DVT PD rate always lands in this 2.5% to 5% rate. And this, there's just no other group that stands out.
Don't forget also the numbers are higher for those studies that use venograms. The numbers are higher for those that have used MR pelvic venograms in addition to leg. So it's, it depends how hard you look.
Yeah. Well, these are either symptomatic or found on weekly duplex screening studies.
The symptomatic issue is, of course, now suddenly you've got yet another subjective component.
Yeah. So there are so many variables that we're stumbling around in the dark trying to figure out what to do with these patients. And so that's why we haven't completely abandoned the use of Lovenox or heparin, because we still believe that there probably there still is some benefit there. We haven't been able to measure it, but we have identified some groups that may very well be at increased risk for hemorrhage progression. And I think that we did our best to look back at clinically significant hemorrhage progressions. And even those that you can't measure and say are clinically significant, would you really want your hemorrhage to get bigger because you got started on Lovenox if there was no benefit? If we could prove that there really is no benefit to Lovenox or heparin, then you really wouldn't want your hemorrhage to get bigger, even if our very crude outcome measures, which is primarily Glasgow outcome scores, which are so crude that we've absolutely never proven that any intervention in the management of patients with traumatic brain injuries makes any difference at all. That's how bad our outcome measures are. So to say that there's no difference in the clinical outcome doesn't mean much. You know, I'd rather not have my hemorrhage get bigger because somebody gave me a drug that I didn't need. And I definitely would want it to get bigger if somebody gives me a drug that I shouldn't have. And I think these patients over here, whose first followed CT scan shows ICH progression, they really do need to have their Lovenox held. They really should not get Lovenox the morning after admission if that morning after scan shows that it's gotten worse. And then so we repeat their scan in 48 hours. If it's stable then, we'll consider putting them on Lovenox. If it shows further progression, we still don't put them on. And then you have to ask yourself, how many steps do you go through before you consider a filter, or just say, you know, we're not going to do anything? It's a real dilemma. I really don't know what the right answer is. When you end up here, you know, how seriously do you consider Lovenox here? I think that this is a simple step that we can take. We can add into the algorithm that if you anticipate the need for interrupting Lovenox within the next couple of days, you probably shouldn't start it, because there really may be a hypercoagulable condition when you start and stop Lovenox in these patients until somebody else looks at this. And we actually have blood banked on a lot of these patients, and we're hoping to go back and try to do some kind of study to see if we can measure any kind of coagulation parameters in this patient population to see if there's anything going on. But obviously that would be easier to do in a prospective manner.
If you can do, well, I mean, the issue has always been the company is certainly taken that, well, you know, you don't need to measure the factor 10A activity. You know, they're right, because it's impractical in real time. The turnaround times are so long, et cetera. You know, if you could actually show that, that would be the first thing that, towards that kind of development that makes a difference. You know, and just to be devil's advocate, I don't mind hemorrhages getting bigger. I've seen too many people stand up, take their first step, clutch their chest, keel over and die in front of me. It's always those first steps that are worse. They always do it right when they reach the door threshold, too. And they never fail to do it when like either a mother or wife or younger girlfriend is around. It's always.
Yeah.
But maybe the point is they can take a first step because their hemorrhage isn't bigger.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know, because we don't scan them unless they were clinically worse. And that's, you know, it's just not either you scan everybody or so on. So, yeah, you could get your own people in line, you know, to follow your lead and say, look, we're going to do this. Even a single center study where people are truly randomized to receive A, B, and C, there's nothing heparin or enoxaparin.
Yeah, we definitely need to do it.
Nobody's been able to do it yet.
So after these studies, we have talked about it, and we definitely would like to do a prospective study. I don't know if we have enough volume to do it by ourselves. We really need a partner for a multi-center study to make this worthwhile, because otherwise it's going to take us too long to get statistical value.
The last thing I wanted to say, the other reason that you have to do it is because the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, it's part of their bundle, and they will not pay, they'll withhold your hospital's money if you don't do it. So
it's a never-ever event, right? These are never-ever occurrences.
That's correct.
Yeah, they're never supposed to happen.
5% of the time, they never happen.
That's right.
So don't think about it,
Just do it. All right. Any other questions or comments? Anybody want to go give Lovenox to anybody in your ICU? All right.